Hi guys, welcome back to the Discussion Lab. And today I want to talk about something that I titled Fast to Adapt, Slow to Admit. Fast to adapt, slow to admit. And it was triggered by a conversation I was having with a friend who knows me for quite some time. I went to high school with him. And in the course of the conversation, he did mention that, Sammy, you might be very good at adapting to new environment. And I quickly downplayed it and went about the conversation. But as has become custom of me, the next day I was going for a walk early in the morning alone. And normally when I'm on these walks, I normally replay some conversations that kind of pop up in my mind, things that were unique the day before or that would stand out to me. And then the conversation I had with him stood out to me, right? And especially that comment that he said that I might be quick to adapt to new environment. And so after a couple of days, I started to observe myself, right, in a third eye perspective on environments that I've been in and other things. So in the course of the weeks that followed, we had a conversation again, and I asked him again, what made you say that? And he too told me he has been thinking about it, and he gave me a few incidences that I thought I might just share with you. And if not, hey, who knows, you might get a thing or two from it. My first environment that I remember moving from was when I was very young, like in my early formative years. I'm talking about definitely before I was 10, 13 years old. We moved from Kumasi, a big city in Ghana, the then Ashanti region, I don't know what it's called now, to Greater Accra, right? So I moved from Kumasi to Accra. And for those of you who know Ghana or who've lived in Ghana, West Africa before, even though both cities are in quote, southern Ghana, Accra is more southern, right? There's a drastic change of lifestyle between these two cities, as it is when you move across regions, across states. There's a certain lifestyle, there's a change of lifestyle that comes with it. That meant for me that I had to change schools, I had to go to a new neighborhood, everything that comes with moving for a child. And I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one that has done it. So that was the first major move. I think I had a hard time adapting to the environment and with the school, and that was okay. Then fast forward in my junior high school days, which will be grade 9, I guess. Don't quote me on that. I moved to a boarding school, right? So for those of you who are not aware what a boarding school is, that would be where the students live on campus, right? Almost like a hostel kind of thing, but we're quite young, and it is early teens, so from 13 till 15, 16. So junior high school then, where we would have to live on campus. And of course, we had some what we call aunties or elderly people who were responsible, or teachers who were responsible for us, right? So that was another big change for me. Fast forward senior high school, I moved out of the region or the state that I was living. I went to Central Region. Then I went to a different high school. This was an all-boys high school. So as you can see, I've had quite a few move in my life in terms of growing up. Not only that, right? I just also realized that for education, I've also had to quickly change my educational scenes. Let me break it down. So I did my Bachelor of Business Administration, right? And I majored in human resource. I started my career in marketing and administration. Then along the line, I decided to pursue a master's degree. Now I went forward and I wanted to do a Master of Science in Economics. This is a very drastic swing between business administration and economics. The amount of statistics and math that I had to do in economics, I almost passed out. It might be one of the toughest things that I survived mentally in my formative years. And then I got to a different point in my life. I thought I want to do something different. So then I got my postgrad certificate in business analysis, specializing in IT. So you see there's been movements, right, from a business administration background, but I moved to economics and public policy. Then I moved to business analysis now in the IT field. Now, not only that have I made these moves, in the course of these educational pursuits and stuff, I had to move countries. So my bachelor's was in West Africa. Not only countries, I also moved continents, bear in note. So my bachelor's was in Ghana, West Africa. My master's was in Europe, Germany. And then my postgrad certificate was in Canada, Ontario. And then I got to work in all these countries. I had the opportunity not only of schooling there, but all of these countries I worked for years there, right? So Ghana is where I started my career and my education. I moved to Europe, and it was the same thing. And so when my friend and I were having the conversation, he even went even more detailed into certain minor switches I made in the course of my life, right? That I can share with you. It's too personal. But you get the point that I'm talking about. My friend made me aware that I am fairly fast to adapt, and I didn't want to accept it. That's why I said I'm slow to admit. And so a few things that I want to share with you here. I realized that the ability to quickly adapt is key if you need to survive in most environments, right? It is key that you learn to quickly adapt to new environments, new scenes, new scenario, new changes in your life. The person who unfortunately is not fast to adapt might linger behind, might fall back. Sometimes your life may be going smooth, something drastic would happen, and you are forced to adapt. And that is okay. It doesn't mean that you are over the shock. Sometimes in the course of your adaptation, you are still in shock. Sometimes you don't even fully understand and comprehend what's happening to you, but you have to keep moving, right? So you have to learn to adapt to things quickly. That is the first point that I want to share with you. And you remember all the things that I was telling you, that certain points I had to change careers, I had to change courses. Most of it wasn't by choice, right? It was out of necessity, and then later by design. I would explain to you. So most of my evolution or my adaptation was out of necessity, later by design. When I was a kid and I had to move from Kumasi to Accra, I didn't have a choice. My parents were moving. You go with them. They can't leave me behind, obviously. And so I had to move with them. And when that happened as a child, you just have to adapt. I think it comes naturally to us. And whether we like it or not, the quicker you accept your new instance, the better it is for you. Also, when I chose my bachelor's degree to do that. However, when it was time for me to do a master's degree, it was more or less out of necessity. I chose a master's degree that I felt like it would give me better opportunities than the one that I previously had. And then also a tiny bit borderline on what interests me. And so when I say by necessity, it was triggered by the necessity to survive financially and career-wise, right? I chose what at that point I believe was best for me career-wise. And so my choosing was what I say design. So it was forced by necessity, but implemented by design. So the necessity part, I had to survive. I chose a master's degree, and the design part was my point where I chose it. Again, when I had to move countries, it wasn't that I really had a choice. Can you believe it, at that time, I couldn't afford the education in my country. It was relatively more affordable for me to do a master's degree outside my country than in my country. And then the opportunity for securing a better, safer job, all those things in code played into that. And so again, it was out of necessity. And so that's what I want to also draw to you, that sometimes, or most often, adaptation comes out of necessity and later by design. Necessity is when it happens to you, you don't have a choice. By design, you choose how you want to model your mind, how you want to control and mold your mind. You can only control as much as you can. That is your head. And so your perspective and your perception, that's what you can control. Even that can be influenced, but try as much as possible to control what you can. And so I chose to always look at the brighter side and feel like I have to try to be open to the new environment I was in. I had to try to let the positive things in the new environment I am in draw closer to me, let me learn from it, and then when the time is right, I would also add more value to the environment that I'm in. So yeah, just talking about instances where I've had to adapt quickly, right? Sometimes you join a new company or a new project, and you have to hit the ground running. There's not time for excuses and why you don't fully understand. You have to adapt quickly and hit the ground running. Sometimes certain environments don't have the space for you to come with excuses and not survive. You better be ready, better adapt and survive. And it is okay. A few things that I have observed about adaptation and surviving in the new rules, at least from my perspective, with my experience, is what I'm sharing so far. I feel like sometimes because we hit the ground running and you have to adapt, like example, when you move towns as a teenager and you have to go to a new school, whilst trying to fit in and then make friends and even understand the bus route, everything else that's happening in your life, classes don't wait for you. You still have to survive and move. And so sometimes you have to learn to quickly focus on what's the most important thing. In this instance, that would be your education, your classes. Make sure you don't lag behind, and naturally other things would hopefully catch up. And so it is okay whilst you're adapting to a new space, new role, new environment, to know that you won't understand everything that is going on. You don't have the resources to do that, but at least try to focus on the most important thing. So if you are at a place and there's an explosion, well, you have to adapt to the explosion. Maybe you may be dazed, you may be dizzy, things will be falling apart and around, but you subconsciously have to figure out the good path to run away from where that happened, right? That's also adaptation. You may not necessarily know what happened, where it came from, but you have to figure out where's the next safe place to run to. That is adapting in the immediate environment. And it is okay, like I said, that you won't know everything that is happening to you. The unfortunate thing is, most of the time, because we are always in the adaptation phase for most people, we don't even, when it gets a bit okay to breathe, we forget to take a breather sometimes. And I find that that is key. Sometimes you have to kind of pat yourself on the back that you're able to adapt to a new environment and then survive, right, and not fall behind or lag behind. And another thing too is, some adaptation doesn't also mean lose your true self, right? You adapt to quickly survive and to add value in the environment you're in and move, but it doesn't mean that you completely be a 360, change your core values and everything. It does, however, mean that it would bring some of your values and some things your beliefs and perception to the limelight, and some of them you may have to shed away because they may not fit in the new environment you are in. And so that is something that you definitely have to consider. Another thing is also, adaptation doesn't mean pretend or be fake, right? The theory of evolution, you know that when you take certain animals to a new environment, they may have to lose or grow new things. Examples, evolution says that certain dogs, when they move to the colder environment because of snow, they had to grow thicker furs, right? So they grow thicker fur so that they can adapt and survive in the environment they are in. Other way around, if you bring them to the warmer climate, they have to lose that thick fur or they are going to die from heat, right? The same fur that was protecting them in the cold might now be attracting heat, and that if they are not able to shed quickly, they may die from it. Point I'm trying to make is, adaptation means that some of the values or some of the beliefs or some of the attributes you have will be brought to light and face the harshness of the new environment. Some of them may add value, some of them they may not fit. You have to change them so that you can better adapt and survive. It doesn't mean that you are being fake. You are just unlearning and relearning new skills to survive. And so I wanted to share this with you, what I call fast to adapt, slow to admit. I'm slow to admit that I'm a fast learner because there's always things to learn. I don't honestly believe I'm a fast learner. I just think I survive and I pull the barest minimum to drag myself through. And I wanted to share this with you, and I hope that you did get some value from it, at least a different perspective on it, that don't downplay all the times that you had to adapt to new environments, new spaces, new jobs, new schools. Not many people can do that. Adaptation doesn't also mean lose yourself. It just means that bring everything to the limelight, things that you already do or know that add value, hold them, perhaps you can share them with your new environment. And the things that will not serve you well in the new environment, evolve from them, as many of us should be evolving to fit in. But hey, what do I know? I know nothing. I'm just a naive observer. Peace.